learn about all about gardening. You know, everybody here, whether you're brand new or not, you're all set to be successful. I'm going to talk about plants some. I've got some other things I'm going to talk about as well. There is a handout just with the names of the plants on there. You know, that's fine. We're taping all this. It's going to go on YouTube. So we're going to turn off all the lights in here. So don't worry about taking notes because you don't need to worry about that. I'd rather you listen to me talk than try and write things down. Before I really get into it, I do want to, I get to introduce myself and give a talk. But before I introduce myself, I'll do my, some housekeeping and those kinds of things. In the stack of papers that you have on your chair, there is an evaluation. We really value that. It really does help us to know how you heard about this. We always say we're very good at communicating with the people we communicate with, all our members. It's everybody else, the newcomers, that we have a hard time with. So it really is helpful if you let us know where you got this information, where you heard about this, and get it to us. And so when you fill it out and you turn it in when you leave, we will give you a voucher that you can come back and use. You can't use it today. You can use it between August and October to get a free plant off of our plant cart that we have out front. Usually it's up by our visitor center. For those of you who don't know, if you become a member or stay engaged with us, you'll find that we love giving people plants. You can tell with the instructors we have, there's a real ethos here in the horticultural science department at NC State about sharing our passion. We are all very passionate about what we do, and we love to share it, and you get that certainly with Bryce and Ann. I do also want to thank our staff here for putting this on. I kind of came up and said, hey, I want to do a free program that we open up to all of our all the newcomers that are coming, and we're going to try and continue to do this with some different topics and really build this community of gardeners. Is there any other housekeeping I need to remember?
You're going to sign your book?
Oh, if you bought a book, I will sign it afterwards, and I will stay here and answer questions. Until the last person's gone. I'm happy to do that. All right. So, I am Mark Weathington. I already introduced myself at the beginning. I am director, and here at the Arboretum, we really are all about plants. We evaluate plants. We promote plants. We grow plants. Give away plants. But really, it's about getting the right plants to the right people in the right place and having them be successful. That's important. And you got a lot of that from Bryce and so before I jump into some just real good easy plants, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to be successful. I also want to mention a little bit about the Arboretum very quickly because many of you are new to the Arboretum. So it's the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. Who is J.C.? J.C. Raulston was a professor, came here in 1975 and started the Arboretum in 1976. Is kind of when we dated too. And he was just a tireless, passionate promoter of plants and gardening, and really helped revolutionize the plants that we're able to grow. We can get so many different things because of JC. The palette was much more limited before. So in 2001 or 2004, I can't remember which, Horticulture Magazine commissioned this painting. They call it the Heavenly Garden Party. This is the 25 greatest gardeners who had passed away. No living people in there. I won't go through and name them all, but there's a few. Thomas Jefferson, you probably know. I don't know if everybody will know all the other ones, but Thomas Jefferson, there's no greater service you can do for your country than to introduce a new plant, or that's paraphrased. So this is pretty good company, and right here is J.C. Raulston. So he didn't get the front row with Chinese Wilson and Gertrude Jekyll, but he did get color. So all the way in the back. And if you ever learn anything about him, this is they really captured him. He's kind of bent over and he's got pruners in his hands. And JC was notorious, perhaps, for liberating cuttings from gardens he visited. But there are so many gardens, public gardens, that grow plants and then want to keep them all to themselves. And JC shared everything with nurserymen to try and get these plants out. And we still do that, so do like that. If you want to learn more about them, there's a great book by one of our members, garden writer Bobby Ward, Chlorophyll in His Veins. Really a great book. So the other thing, yes, JC, what's an arboretum? This is where we grow sticks. Stole this off of Chris's door. But it's a collection of trees and shrubs. So hopefully most of y'all have had a chance to be out in the Arboretum if you're new to the place. And we are growing and evaluating many thousands of plants. We're not like other gardens where we really try and, you go to these gardens in England and we'll say, this is 300-year-old tree. We cut things down with a chainsaw and put something else in because we're a research garden. We are evaluating plants. So it's always changing. We do try and do it in interesting ways and aesthetic ways, and we grow different types of plants in different environments, like dry gardens and Japanese gardens. And it's a beautiful place. So how do we do all that? We're a university garden, and my salary is paid by the university, and our lights and water is paid by the university. But everything else, all our operations, all of our staff, everybody else is. We fund through programs and memberships and donations and that kind of thing. We do also use students, and really, this is not right. We should just say people, because we also have an incredible volunteer corps. 2017, our volunteers put in over 12,000 hours of service here. That's 6 full-time people. That is amazing. And the students are great. You hear people saying, they're the kids today, they're twittering and tweetsing and whatnot, always on their phones. And yes, that is true. They are always on their phones. But usually it's after I've told them to do something, they're Googling a better way to do it, smarter, faster, easier than me. And I will not speak broadly for college students because I have 2 of my own and I have real doubts about them. But the horticulture students here at NC State, and I'm not an NC State grad, so I got no dog in this fight. They are amazing. They really are amazing. They're so hardworking. They're so smart. The horticulture industry is in great hands moving forward. So we're a living laboratory. That's part of what we do. We have lots of classes out here, teach the students all kinds of different things. And if you give them good directions, the students are amazing. I do give talks all over the place, and I put in this slide, because it's good for a chuckle, right? Put in this slide when I was giving a talk in England, and it reads a little different there. So, gardening in the South, right? I wrote a whole book about it, but this is it in a nutshell, right? This is gardening in the South. How many of you came from up north, and this is what you think about sun and gardening? Yeah. This my grandmother would say this is fancy because the tulips and the tire match. That's fancy gardening. So we'll get into some gardening in the South, but first I want to make a confession. I put down my piece of paper, didn't I? I wrote it down. So what was it? Bryce is, he wants to reduce inputs. And you were laissez-faire. I am a lazy gardener. I have a whole talk called Plants and Plans from a Lazy Gardener. Bryce said that what he loves is the doing, not me. What I love is being surrounded by plants. So I want to be able to relax and enjoy my garden. So I really do look at trying to make things as low maintenance as possible. And part of that is, as Bryce said, is the soil. And I won't go into soils because Bryce talked about it. But how many people have seen something like this, right? Really important. You know, you got 4 to 6 inches of sticks, and the layer of brown, the layer of green, brown, green, brown. Keep it as wet as a wrung out sponge, right? You got to do all these things to make your compost. This is the stupidest thing that has ever been perpetrated on the gardening department. You got to do all that. I mean, people show this, and who's going to do that? Whose garden gives them nice layers of brown and green material to use? This is ridiculous. Here's a pro tip. I've been doing this professionally, getting paid to garden for 25 years. Well, it's getting to be more than that now. Over 25 years. You know what happens when plants die? They break down. They decompose. They become compost. That's what they do. I've learned, it's taken me, a couple of decades to get there, but that's what happens. You can help them along, you can make it go faster, but they break down. That's what they do. So all this stuff is ridiculous. Keep it wet as a wrung out sponge. Let me tell you, you said you only buy enough plants, won't buy more plants than you can plant in a weekend. I heard people chuckling. When I bring home plants, they go in the ground. I can dig them up and move them later maybe, but I am not watering plants. It's not something, I hate watering. I hate watering. So I'm not going to water plants. I'm going to put them in the ground because then they got a fighting chance. They got no chance in that nursery pot. So the thought of going out and watering my compost, that's not going to happen. You know what happens when your compost dries out? It stops working. All the little microorganisms just stop. You know what happens when it gets wet again? They start working again. Takes a little longer to get your compost, but that's okay. I live on the end of a cul-de-sac and I'm surrounded by woods. I just put all my compost in a big pile in the woods. And I always say that I'm going to then, use that compost back in the garden. But really, what I do is I'll be like, ooh, I got a nice planting bed here in this woodland. And I start planting right in that, and I'll start a new compost pile somewhere else. Design is not my strong suit, so I got woodland beds that are just little mounds of old compost piles. And as Bryce mentioned, it's all about organic matter, trying to get that 5% of organic matter into the soil, right? So it doesn't matter what you have. Now, you're not going to use lobster compost here, right? You might find peanut shells or something like that. It's just about, it's carbon. Carbon is carbon. You're trying to get that into the soil. So if you're up in Maine, you can use lobster compost. If you're in New Zealand, it's all about organic matter. Carbon is carbon. Something Bryce said that you might have missed when he was talking about mulching. He said 2 inches. More is not necessarily better. Here's something people don't understand about mulch. I mean, it's great that it breaks down, you get organic matter. We use partially decomposed leaves as mulch here because it's so great for building organic matter. But here is why you're mulching. You're mulching here in the south. If you're from the north and you're doing it for winter protection, forget about that. Here in the south, we are mulching to reduce weeds, all those weed seeds, and to conserve moisture in the soil over the summer when it's hot. We get 50 inches of rain a year, and if you look across the year, it is almost perfectly steady. Every month gets almost the same amount of rain. However, in August, you might get the entire 4 or 5 inches that you're getting for that month in one event, and nothing else the rest of the month. So it's not, it's steady all over. We get twice as much rain as London. We think of London as raining all the time. It's just gray all the time. So if you keep that in mind, that lets you know what you want to do with your mulch. Bryce said 2 inches, that's a good baseline, but it really depends on what kind of mulch you're using. If you're using bigger, chunkier things, you go deeper. Sounds kind of backwards, right? But you got to go deeper because to prevent weed seeds from germinating, you need to block light. Weeds are often plants that come up when there's disturbance. They come up very quickly. It grows very fast. So if the sunlight hits them, boom, they go. So you mulch to cover that. But if you mulch too deep, then what happens is the mulch stays moist. You don't want your mulch staying wet. You want underneath the mulch to stay wet. So if it's too deep, the mulch stays wet and weed seeds germinate in your mulch. Now they're a lot easier to pull when they germinate in your mulch, but you're not stopping them. So you want the mulch to dry so that no sunlight can get through and your mulch is dry. So if it's something fine, you go 2 inches. You don't want to go much below 2 inches because then you don't have good coverage. But it's something, if you know why you're doing things, you're not just mulching because everybody else mulches, but you're thinking about why, it really helps out. And you don't want to do this. That is doing nothing for the tree other than protecting it from lawnmowers. But it gives a little good habitat for critters to live in there. It stays nice and moist for fungus and things like that around the trunk. And it is invasive. Bad gardening practices spread. So really don't want to do that. So we've got who is a new gardener? Okay. Who's an experienced gardener? Right. Okay. So all you experienced gardeners, I know you do this. You go to your garden center and you go to the back corner, you go to, behind the big piles of old nursery pots and junk, and you go to the scratch and dent area and you buy this plant. And then you brag to your friends, I got this tree for $5. It was $150 and I got it for $5. I am so smart. And then you plant it, and you're here to listen to people talk about gardening, and then you take care of it, right? You're good, and it grows. Or it doesn't grow much, but it doesn't die. And maybe it doesn't die the next year. And then it dies. And you say, I'm a bad gardener, or this nursery doesn't sell good plants, or that's a plant that doesn't grow in this area. And what you did is you bought junk. What other areas in your life do you go out and say, can this couch here is nice, and I need a couch, but do you have out back by the dumpster, do you have ones with, legs and buy quality plants. Plants are so cheap. So how many people have had experience with Daphne? Winter Daphne. Little evergreen shrub, just incredibly fragrant winter flowers, great plant. It lives 4 or 5 years usually, 6 years, and then it dies. And that's pretty common. And people say, oh, I don't plant Daphne, I keep it alive for 5 years and then it dies. And say, it costs, I bought it at $30 and then it died. You got 5 years for $30. You will go to Dead Lobster, eat a bad meal, pay more than $30 and not think twice about it. And it's a plant that's going to live for 5 years and be a great garden performer for those 5 years. Is $30 is too much. It's crazy. Plants die. Your couch is not going to die inside your house, but your dog may tear a hole in it, or you might spill something on it, or whatever. But it's going to stay there most likely. And plants die. But the majority of plants don't die. You notice the ones that die. You don't think about the ones that live. And so, as an investment, you pay $150 for a nice oak tree that you're putting in because you have a nice big lot. That tree will live for literally hundreds of years if treated properly. That's a pretty good investment for $150. Even if you don't plan on being in that house or passing it on to your kids like we used to. These plants are cheap when it comes right down to it. So buy good plants, not bad plants, because this is a good way to be unsuccessful. I have an extension. I have an extension appointment, so I answer lots of questions. Feel free to email me and ask me things. I'm always happy to help people out. But I will get things like this, pictures that say, what do I do for my tree? Nothing. Cut it down, buy another one, plant it. And people don't like that. People will not get rid of plants. I go to people's houses and there'll be some thorny thing growing right by the sidewalk that reaches out and grabs you. They say, yeah, I got to prune that back 3 times a year. And I say, get rid of it. And they look at me like I have 2 heads. I say, but it's not dying. It grows well. Yeah, it grows too well. It's a bad plant in a bad spot, and you're having to do a lot of work on it, and you don't like it. But people hate killing live plants. Kill live plants. They don't talk. They're fine. They're plants. They make compost. Nobody complains about cutting their grass and hurting it or spraying wheat. Get rid of plants. If it's not doing what you like, get rid of it. If it's growing up over your windows and I gotta cut it back, get rid of it. Don't keep messing with bad plants. Get rid of them. I get this. And literally, the email that comes with this says, what do I do for my plant? It does this every year. What can I spray on it? Nothing. There are so many great plants out there. If you have to treat for pests every year, get rid of it. Just don't mess with it. Unless your great-grandmother smuggled it out of Nazi Germany, do not worry about this plant. It's not a good plant. So one other pest that I got to address is deer, because it doesn't matter where you are, the deer is a problem, right? I don't have good solutions for you for deer. I grew up in the country, and we knew how to deal with deer. We had many fewer of them, too. It's amazing. I wrote a gardening column for a newspaper for about 14, 15 years up in Virginia. And I would sometimes, people would always ask this, and they'd say, well, one of the best things is to get a good dog. A good dog can help keep deer away. And then people started sending me pictures of dogs. And I always respond, I said a good dog. That's not a good dog. So let's get into plants. I talked about some of the things to be successful, and you need that. I can't remember if it was, I think it was Ann who mentioned this, about the plants. You've got to get them established, You can say it's drought tolerant, you can say it's tough as nails, but you got to give it a fighting chance. Now, I don't mind buying new plants and putting in new plants and plants dying. I'm one of those people, like Bryce said, he doesn't mind if half the things the plants dies. So I really do put things in the ground, and only the strong survive. I will sometimes water things, but not very often, and not regularly. So I really do like plants that are just tough as nails. Now, I went to school for horticulture up in the mountains at Virginia Tech, and I learned this plant, cast iron plant, as a house plant. It doesn't grow outside in the mountains. But here, it's great. You know why they call it cast iron plant? You can't kill the stupid thing. This is one plant that's growing in a bar. If they got one living plant in a bar, no windows, no anything. People pouring beer in there, and it still grows. And it's a great evergreen perennial. And there's so many out there, ones with white spots and yellow spots and streaks and splotchy stuff. The one where I really fell in love with this was before I worked here. I came here and I saw this plant, Asahi. This white tips, it just, oh my gosh, I fell on my knees, and I was really looking to see if I could get a little piece of it out. It's just a fantastic plant. You plant it in the shade. It comes every year. You get a bad winter like we had this past winter. The leaves get a little ragged. You just cut them off. Although here's where the good gardening and lazy gardening kind of come at loggerheads. So I always wonder why my cast iron plant wouldn't grow as tall as some other ones. And somebody finally told me, a great gardener, told me that if you wait for the new leaves to get up about half their height, before you cut off the old leaves, they'll get taller. Have you heard this? But if you cut them all off in late winter, the plant stays shorter. And I left all the old leaves on one year and was going to do this, but all the new leaves come up among all the old leaves. So you're stuck snipping out one leaf at a time. That I'm not doing. I had really ratty leaves all summer that year because it didn't bother cutting them out. And then the next year I just cut them all down. Chris Bloom talks about all the plants that he cuts back with his lawnmower. Plants that he just can mow over and shear them back that way. There are all these great things that people think, oh, primroses, those grow in England, places like, but there are primroses we can grow in the shade. See what this Japanese primrose. Spigelia, this is one called Drag Queen. There are plenty of other ones out there, mostly in pinks and lavenders and whites. This one has kind of that frilly petal in there called Drag Queen, but great in a loose soil. If you get that soil prepped and go well and put it in a shady spot, it's amazing. Spring flowers. Other perennials. For you new gardeners, when we talk about perennials, I always forget that sometimes we're talking. When I'm used to talking to experienced gardeners, the vocabulary
Yeah.
isn't always there. A perennial is technically a plant that comes back and flowers year after year after year. So technically, an oak tree is a perennial. In usage, the common usage, a perennial is a non-woody plant that will come year after year after year and keep flowering. An annual is one that flowers one year and dies. That's your petunias and plants like that. So I don't talk about the annuals because I'm a lazy gardener and I'm not planting new things every year. Not happening. So right now we're talking about some herbaceous perennials, mostly for shade, part sun. This is a native plant. Isn't this amazing? It used to be very hard to come by, and when you can't find a plant to buy and grow, people say, oh, it's hard to grow. Well, it's not. It was difficult in the nursery. They've gotten it figured out pretty much now, so you can get it a little bit more readily. But it's called Indian pink. Look at that thing. Bright red flowers with a little yellow on the inside. Isn't that great? Hummingbirds love it. You put it right on that edge of sun and shade. A lot of plants, and Bryce hit on this a little bit, a lot of plants will grow in shade. They just don't flower as well. So a lot of shade plants that we know are good for shade, will grow fine in full sun. They'll flower better, but they need a lot of water, they need more attention if you do that. Some will burn, but many of them will grow actually a lot better in sun. It's just that there's so many other things that grow in sun, and so much fewer things that do well in shade that you put them in the shade. Things like Farfugiums. Look at that. Those leaves are very big. Sometimes they call it. Somebody calls it tractor seat plant. The old John Deere metal tractor seats. But that's an evergreen perennial. It's there. It's big. It almost takes the place of a small shrub, and then it flowers in late summer into fall. It's a gorgeous plant. Now, most of these plants I've put on this list, and it's a relatively short list, are pretty readily available. This is one that is not so readily available. You're lucky living here. We have some of the best nurseries anywhere. Plant Delight's nursery, just down the road, is one of the premier places for getting perennials. If you've never been there, they have 4 open houses a year, one each season. Go see it. It is amazing. My wife, Plant Delight's nursery.
Plant Delight.
Yes. And my wife hates, to steal from the owner of Plant Delights, when he used to talk about his late wife, Michelle, she didn't much like plants when she met him, and now she hates them. That's my wife. That's why I talk at these things, because my wife won't let me talk about plants. I sent her down to the garden at Plant Delight's nursery with my mother, and I didn't go with her, because she would have hated it with me. She came back and was raving about how amazing it was. We also have great other university gardens. North Carolina Botanic Garden does an amazing job, conservation, native plants. Sarah P. Duke Gardens, they do an amazing job with money. Like a lot of things with Duke. But no, they're doing some of the best horticulture on the East Coast. They've got a lot of money, but they're spending it so well. The stonework, the plants, it's great what's happening over there. But so this is a plant that's hard to come by. You can get it from Plant Delight's nursery. It grows in the shade. It is related to African violets. Grows about 2.5 feet tall.
It's flowering right now.
And it's just starting right now, and it will flower in the late part of the summer in shade. Most shade plants flower in spring because that's when there are, where they grow wild, there aren't leaves on the trees, they get sunlight, they do all their stuff then, and then they kind of conserve energy the rest of the year. This doesn't. In deep shade, this will flower with these big 2-inch tubular flowers that are gold and burgundy on the inside. You know why you don't see it available? I mean, it's an easy grower. It spreads. Propagates about as easy as any plant. You pick a cutting and you stick it and it grows. You know why you don't get it? Why you can't go into your local garden center and get it? Because you're not shopping for plants in August when it's coming into flower. You're shopping in the spring. So nobody's looking at this plant in spring and saying, yeah, that's the plant I want. They're looking at the pretty flowers. So you got to really know what you're wanting. And that's where places like this are so beneficial, because then you can go and see plants and then try and track them down. That's not always easy. Irises, we all know irises and love irises, right? Iris unguicularis flowers in the middle of winter. You snow around it, it's flowering. It is great. It's tough. It'll flower in moderate shade. It'll grow great in full sun. Now the only downside is the flowers are kind of down low, held in the foliage. So they're not held up high, but it's in the middle of winter, you know? For those of y'all new here to North Carolina, summers can be miserable. I don't garden a whole lot during the summer, if I'm being honest. I let weeds go a little bit. When we get a cool day, I'll go out and pull a bunch up. I do a lot of gardening in the middle of winter because sometimes it's 70 degrees and sunny in the middle of winter and lovely. So, you know, things like this are great. And there are white ones and there are a bunch of different ones. Hard to come by because it's flowering in the middle of winter and nobody's buying plants in the middle of winter. So you have to know that you're looking for it in order. Fuchsias. Put this on because some of you come from up north and y'all grow your hanging baskets of fuchsias every year and they're gorgeous. They last for about 15 minutes here. Don't go to your garden center and buy that hanging basket of fuchsia unless you want it just for that one spring party you're having and then plan on composting it because they melt in the summer. But this one, we planted this one in the ground, I believe it was either 4 or 5 years ago now. It comes up, it flowers all summer long, beginning to end. Frost hits it, kills it back to the ground, pops right back up next spring. It is just been so reliable. And I always love when you find these plants that are otherwise hard for us to grow that do so well. Angel earrings cascading. Angel earrings, amazing plant. And it's got the color of real fuchsia. It's not fat like those, you know, big florist ones, but it kind of twines around. We have it kind of scrambling up through a shrub. It's spectacular. Another one. I'm trying to hit plants since I can't talk about so many. You know, I could give, you know, hour after hour talks on about plants. So I'm trying to hit some that are really showstoppers, not kind of the. I'm not going to talk about Japanese hollies here. I'm going to talk about things that I think are interesting. This is comfrey, one called Axminster Gold. It makes a mound of foliage, 3 to 4 feet wide, a couple feet tall, 18, 24 inches tall, and then sends up a 4-foot spike of flowers. These, you know, I don't know if, as a designer, if pale pink with bright gold chartreuse is ideal, but I think it's an awfully cool plant. And we grow it in shade, I grow it in sun. You know, in sun it wants some water, it'll get kind of floppy. When the flowers start fading, you just cut them all the way back. Sometimes in the middle of summer, the leaves look a little ragged. You cut them off and put up new ones, and it keeps them up all winter long here. So you have this beautiful display all winter long. You know, it looks almost like a big hosta out in the garden. It really is. It's an amazing plant.
The yucca also sends up the spike.
The yucca, yes, also sends up the spike. Yeah. Yeah, I will say, you know, this chartreuse edge, gold edged, I will say, talking about vocabulary, this is where me as a college student working at a nursery, my vocabulary wasn't quite right. Wasn't really about the plants, but we got in this plant. It was a weeping mulberry, and we had a sign printed up for it that the manager had done, and it said, chartreuse flowers in spring, blah, 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 blah. You know, it was a weeping one. You know, where to grow in full sun, whatever. So, you know, I didn't know anything about plants, and I'm at this nursery, and people ask me questions, and I tell them all about it, and the way I would do it is I kind of, out of the side of my eye, read the sign and say, oh yes, this plant gets about 4, maybe 5 feet tall, really wants full sun, yeah, do that kind of thing. And so I read the sign, and I tell them, it flowers hot pink in the spring, because I didn't know what color chartreuse was. I thought it was like magenta. And so I always, in my mind, there's somebody who's still waiting for the weeping mulberry to flower. Next year's the year. If I could get back in touch with them, I'd tell them to go beat it with a stick. You know, we have so many amazing natives. Baptisia is one of the best perennials you can grow. It is tough as nails. I mean, once you have it established, you break a shovel on one that's been in the ground for a few years trying to dig it up and transplant it. It is that reliable. And for those of you from up north who like your lupins, this is about as close as you're going to get. You're not growing your lupins.
Is that full sun?
It will grow in shade, but it's sparse and doesn't flower much if too much shade. Better in full sun. That's where it is really amazing. And you can get blues, lavenders, golds, yellows, whites, bicolors. There are so many out there now. It's really getting a renaissance. And I said I'm a lazy gardener. One of the best things about Baptisia in my mind is in the fall, you know how you usually have to cut your perennials back and clean them up?
Yeah.
All the stems, abscise, get detached at ground level, and if you just leave it long enough, it'll blow like a tumbleweed into the garden. It is great. You don't have to touch it at all. Their dog runs through all my beds, so I don't mind if it plays in their garden. Catmints. Pollinator plants are so important. Although I will tell you, here's my one thing about pollinator plants. They're invasive. What? No, some are, but if you want to really support pollinators, think less about individual plants. There are some plants that are great, Pycnanthemum, mountain mint, phenomenal pollinator plant. But think less about individual plants and more about having a diverse collection of plants. If the bee doesn't like that flower, it's going to go to a different flower. That's fine. If it doesn't have the nectar for it, but as long as you're planting a lot of diverse things, there'll always be something there. Our bees make honey all winter long. Bees are active in the winter here in the south when it's warm. People who have beehives usually put out sugar water. We don't here. We pull honey off the hives because when the bees are active, they can go find plants in flower every single day of the year here. So something like this, the Nepeta, the catmints, there's so many amazing ones out there, and they're so easy and reliable. Sunny, really dry spots once established, easy and gorgeous. And then those are ones you can really just shear over once they finish flowering. Crinums, if you want a plant that's as close to indestructible as possible, crinum lilies, plant them. Kind of forget about them. They'll keep going. I've heard people say that there's never been a crinum that's been actually killed. Sometimes it's get buried too deeply and it doesn't come up above ground, but you move some soil around and all of a sudden it pops up. Really is that easy. Beware if a friend says, hey, I have got some crinum lilies that I'd love to share with you. Come on over and we'll divide some. Ask them if they have a backhoe, because digging those things out can be tough. But there are all kinds of great ones. Ellen Bosanquet is one, Cecil Howdyshell, really easy plants. You can get whites and reds and pinks, and nice, strappy, leathery foliage otherwise. The purple coneflower, I gotta say, I've never been a big purple coneflower fan. I think most of them, the colors kind of washed out. And I never thought they were great performers in the garden. You always hear them touted as these great perennials. Finally, somebody told me what you need to do with most of the purple coneflowers to be successful with them. Don't let them flower the first year. And that's hard for gardeners to do, but cut off every flower the first year. They will multiply. You'll get, instead of having one little rosette, you'll get these big, massive rosette, and then the next year, they'll be great. And they'll all survive if you do that. Usually you plant out 20 of them, and about half of them don't make it through the winter. It's because you let them flower. Never let them flower the first winter. So there are some great ones. I think just the species is pretty washed out purple. I don't think it's attractive much at all. But some of these, like Elton Knight, I think are really getting good. And there's more double ones now, like Secret Passion. They won't always stay double. They tend to revert, but you get some double flowers and single flowers in there, which are pretty cool. There are purple coneflowers that aren't purple anymore. Tangerine Dream. I always hated orange flowers. I'm really getting into orange right now. I've been planting a lot of orange at my house. Hot papaya. There's a lot of them out there, and they're the better ones are the ones that hang around the marketplace for a few years. So the ones that the brand new bright shiny one maybe give it a year or two to see if it's really going to pan out as a good plant. If everybody stops selling it the next year, it probably wasn't very good. Let's go beyond the herbaceous perennials and start talking about the shrubs, or at least the things in between. Peonies. Now, that's another one. Northerners all want peonies. We can grow peonies great here in the South. Most of them, it flowers for about, 2 hours, and then it all shatters because it's hot when it flowers. But many years ago, actually, they only became popular fairly recently. Somebody finally crossed the tree peonies, the woody ones, with the herbaceous peonies. And so now there's this whole line of hybrids between the two, which give the heat tolerance, long flowering of the one with the abundance of flowers, and I'm really showing you the other. This is the first one, Bartzella. I've never gotten a good story about what that name is about, but Bartzella. They were selling little packages of peony roots at one of the big box stores, 3 of them. 3 Ito is the first hybridizer, they're all called Ito peonies. 3 Ito peonies, 2 Bartzella, and 1 other one. They didn't label which was which, so you just got 3. They were very weak growers. I did buy some because they were selling for $30, and when these first came out, they were 150. Now you can get them for $30 or $40, and worth it. We must have had 80 flowers on our big one out here last year. Great big flower, and over a long period of time, and a beautiful plant. So good. Hydrangeas. We have some native hydrangeas. Hydrangea arborescens is the native smooth hydrangea. Hydrangeas, I have a love-hate. I don't plant a lot of hydrangeas at my house because when it gets hot and dry, they really flag and look a little sad. But if you like hydrangeas, man, look at that, incredible. These are these huge flowers on there, really showy things. My Aucubas, I love Aucubas. Not everybody does, gold dust plant. People, I actually was talking in the UK, and the woman who runs their plant collection scheme, the national collection scheme, I said something about Aucuba, and she kind of sniffed at me. They're kind of parking lot plants. And I said, yes, people buy them and plant them, and they live. Why would you turn your nose up at a great plant? It's colorful in the shade. We were amassing a collection. We had well over 100 of them. About 90% of them were green with yellow spots. Although this one, which is available in the trade, if you like that plant, if you like that look, that speckled look, this one, Hosoba Hoshifu, by far the best one. That's why we had 100 plus Aucuba, so we could tell you, which are the best, and out of the spotted ones. But there's all kinds of other stuff out there. Natsunukomo, look at this. That's the new growth. The flowers aren't showy on Aucuba, but that's pretty nice in the spring. Comes out pure white, and then it goes green. Isn't that great? I love that plant. Why isn't everybody buying it? They selling that and buying it. And you got things with gold edges. I like gold leaf plants. I had very little design instruction in college. I am not a designer. I don't know what that says about my personality, but it's not creative personality. But what little I got, I was told gold leaf plants are the worst things ever. First, the instructor hated them. As perverse as I am, I decided that I really liked them. So I love red twig dogwoods, but here in the South they get so many cankers and diseases that a lot of times they're not worth growing. But this is one, Avalon Gold, that we've been growing for quite a while, that has this bright gold foliage. It'll green up over the summer, and great red stems over the winter. It's a great pollinator plant. It's a great bird plant because it has fruit. It is so fantastic. So how tall does Avalon Gold get? This one gets about 4 or 5 feet tall. It's not too big. Maybe gets taller over time. Whenever you see a label with how big a plant gets, Bryce said gardener's lie, right? He said, it gets full sun. Yeah, gardener's lie. Nurserymen all lie to you. They all lie. When that tag says 4 to 5 feet on a shrub, what they mean is 4 to 5 feet in about 5 years. 3 to 5 years. You know, a tree that well, let's go with this. This tree, Acer bergerianum, Trident Maple, one of the best medium-sized urban tolerant maples around. We use them as street trees. That grows, if you look on tags, it'll probably say 25 to 30 feet. I have seen them in the wild, in Asia, with trunks this big around that were every bit of 80 feet tall. But it'll get 25 feet tall in about 10 years, given good nutrition and good growth. So be careful when you read those labels about how big plants will get. But great maple, there's so many maples, and people keep planting ones that really don't love it. A lot of our native maples are really from mesic areas where it's damp, these bottomland forests, and don't really thrive in our cultivated landscapes. But something like this is great, and it's a beautiful plant. We love snowbells here, styrax, they white flowering plants. We have some native styrax, but there's also Asian ones like this one. This is one with purple leaves. A lot of plants with purple leaves they turn green very quickly here. This is one that really holds out. It's got these pure white flowers against those purple black leaves. It's amazing. This one actually comes out kind of muddy green and then gets darker and darker and darker. And then it greens up a little bit again towards the end of the Love this plant. Now, my favorite native flowering tree is perhaps this plant, yellowwood, which you don't see offered very often. But this is late spring, early summer. Most of the spring flowering things are done. And here is this tree that is just dripping with these icicles of white. Isn't that amazing? And it's got such a beautiful head. And now sometimes people say, well, it's got tight crotch angles a little bit, and it can fall apart if you have an ice storm. Well, I've seen, 75-year-old healthy oak trees fall apart in an ice storm. That seems like a little bit unfair to blame them on that. Somebody else said on campus that there was a microburst and a bunch of them were damaged and we shouldn't plant it. It's a micro. When you have weird things happen, weird things happen. It's a great tree. You know why you don't see this one much? Because it is ugly as a small tree. If you go buy, a 25-gallon container, it'll be straight up, may have one branch over here, and it's ugly. And it takes a little while to get through that teen stage. And once it gets big, it's gorgeous. So again, know what you're looking for. That's why it's great to visit gardens, because then you know what a large plant will look like. Did a survey of about a dozen or so of my colleagues who work at gardens and are researchers and deal with trees, and asked them, give me your 5 best flowering trees. It was for a talk I was putting together. One plant that was on 85% of the lists, Chinese French tree. So easy. And look at that, that's incredible flower. So I mentioned edibles very quickly, because that's so popular. We look at ornamental edibles. We don't do much in the way of vegetables and that kind of thing here, but Japanese persimmon. Look at that, the beautiful fruits. They're gorgeous, easy to do, fall color. Our native persimmon is huge. Japanese persimmon is a nice small tree. Very easy to put in the landscape. Isn't that gorgeous? During the summer, the leaves are like glossy green. Pomegranates, it's one of the superfoods, right? Pomegranates, they do great here. And there are all kinds of them that are beautiful, like the Nochi Shibari. And the fruit's beautiful on the plants. And they're shrubby plants. They don't get real big. They're multi-stem upright shrubs. They are great. And you want a hedge? And a hedge of pomegranates, different pomegranates. And they lose their leaves in the winter, but they're so dense and twiggy that you really can't see through it even when they lose their leaves. And you get, superfood. These are great. You put pomegranate seeds, start putting pomegranate seeds in your salads. Just every salad, no matter what else you put in there, put pomegranate seeds. You got a little acid, tart, a little crunch to them. Great in salads. Another one that people don't know up here, pineapple guava. Acacelloiena. Lovely name, right? Well, here it doesn't form fruits, those pineapple guava fruits. It needs a longer season. At the coast, you can get fruits. But these gorgeous flowers, these petals are thick and almost waxy, and they are delicious. I've eaten a lot of edible flowers, and there are a lot of edible flowers, and that's exactly what they are. There is a difference between edible and palatable. When I was a kid, there was a show, That's Incredible. You ever see that? There was a guy who made a car on there. You know, it was, so anything is edible if you got the will. These are delicious. We show this to our interns, our summer interns, and I'll go back out and everywhere, you know, from, you know, hand height up, there'll be no more petals on there. They're just all plucked and eaten. They're really cool. So you can sprinkle those in salads or just eat them right off the tree. They literally are, they're sweet. They taste good off the tree. Figs are great. I love figs. Unfortunately, birds love figs as well. So what we do is, what I recommend is find some of the yellow and green fruited varieties like Latarula and some other ones, because you know the birds wait until 2 days before it's perfectly ripe, and then they go in and peck it once and say, oh, this is ripe, and leave. And they leave you a ruined fruit and don't even bother to actually eat it. So these yellow and green skinned ones, now those you have to go through and kind of squeeze them all, you know, squeeze the Charmin and figure out which ones are ripe, because the ripe ones and unripe ones look the same, but at least the birds don't beat you to it. This is a great one. You're talking about espaliered apple trees. I was seeing these espaliered in these old gardens in England this spring, where they'd been done up and they were swirled around in these incredible designs on walls. They were so neat. And they'll get big for us here. You know, read a label, they'll say 4 to 5 feet. 8, 10, 12, 15 feet. I know somebody who plucks his figs from the second story window. But you just cut back those older stems regularly and you keep it in check. So, you know, people always ask, how do I know it's a good plant? One thing you can look for locally, we work with the Johnson County Nursery Association, and we've put up these line of, it's a fairly small line of choice plants, beauty berries, like the pink beauty berry, isn't that great? A little dwarf viburnum that just seems to flower just about nonstop. So look for the choice plants tags. That was one of those plants that Bryce had over his wall. We're known for our red buds. We have a national red bud collection. We have 2 red buds coming out this fall. It'll be hard to come by this fall, but by next spring you should be able to get them. A weeping gold one, and one that comes out at burgundy and gold. It's really nice. This is one we named and introduced, Kay's Early Hope, for Kay Yao. It blooms right in time for March Madness. But we also have the best plant breeders, the best woody plant breeders in the world are here at NC State. Dr. Tom Raney up at the mountains outside Asheville is amazing. And some of the plants he's putting out, like this Pearl Glam Beauty Berry, little dwarf flowering shrub. Oh, these are so good. That Incredible I showed you, he's got them with pink flowers and red flowers. The first one of these that were out was one called Invincible Spirit from Tom Raney. He partnered with a big nursery that grows them, and part of the deal was $1 from every finished plant would go towards breast cancer research. This winter they hit $1 million from Invincible Spirit to go to breast cancer research. Amazing. So not only great plant breeders, but really doing good things out there. His newest are these star flowers, as he's calling them. We always call them anise trees. Scorpio and Orion, those are not on the same plant. This is an Elysium. These are hybrid Elysium. This is the same star anise, the spice. That's a tropical one of these. But beautiful flowers. They just get big. These are smaller ones. They get about 4 or 5 feet by 4 or 5 feet in 3 to 5 years. And you know what's the best thing about these? These are about as close as you can get to being deer-proof. Deer do not like very aromatic foliage. They don't like to eat them. So what used to be this big evergreen shrub are now these small things that flower. This was a part of a whole series of pictures showing them across the summer just flowering kind of nonstop. There is always acceptance. A weed is a plant where you don't want it. Same thing as dirt. Dirt is soil where you don't want it. So if it's in the garden, it's soil. If it's in the house, it's probably dirt. But you can just learn to love the enemy, if you will. A lot of weeds are great for pollinators. So, I'll end with this. I'm very lucky. I have the best job in the world. I work with the best people. I have the best colleagues in the department. We have amazing volunteers and members. And I get to travel all over the place. We go collect plants for evaluation, we lead tours, so I go places like Cuba and Ecuador and South Africa and New Zealand. We're leading a tour to New Zealand in January, actually. Spend a lot of time in China, so it's really, really refreshing. Come around the corner in Taiwan, up on a mountainside, and see that finally Southern gardening is getting out here. We're getting out there, we're going global. So, we'll end with this. I talk a lot about plants. I've always given talks on plants. One of the big member benefits here is our annual plant giveaway. First Saturday in October at 9 a.m. sharp. Well, people start lining up at 6 a.m. or so. You don't need to do that. You don't need to come early. Get there by 8:45 if you're already a member, and you're fine. They come in, and we line up. Get them all out. Let them get plants. Last year, I can't remember, we usually do somewhere between 35 and 4,500 plants that we give away free to our members. It is the best deal on plants that you can get. Go online, look at YouTube, find it in YouTube. We've got a channel on YouTube, which incidentally, all these talks will be on our YouTube channel, so just look for J.C. Raulston, and you can get them. There are some great sped up things of our giveaway. It's a lot of fun. If you're a football fan, you're worried about first Saturday in October interfering with football, got to be here by 9. You can be in your car going by 9:15, 9:30. It's the fastest 15 minutes in horticulture. So, thank you all very much.